All right, so we are live and we are here for the Week 3 video collaboration here on the SportsRoom Talk Show. I am Unger to the Max. That is my guest host for today, Logan. He is a massive Tennessee Titans fan. Tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get to be a Titans fan? I know you said you don't live in Nashville, but
I don't. I'm about an hour away from Nashville. I live in Southern Kentucky. Grew up. I mean, 30 years old. So I was like 6 years old when the Titans first moved to Nashville, and I've just been a diehard ever since. Growing up around it, and my entire family's engulfed in football. So
very cool, very cool. So we're both of our teams are 1-1 coming into this game. Of course, with very different mindsets. You guys beat the Chargers in overtime 27-24, whereas us, we had the opportunity to go 2-0 for the first time since 1993, and we had the opportunity to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh for the first time since 2003. Neither of those things happened because the Steelers beat us 26-22. And in the process, we lost Nick Chubb. So, unfortunately, we do not get to see the running back battle between Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb. I guess as a Titans fan, you're probably a little bit happy about that you don't have to face Nick Chubb, I'm assuming.
absolutely, absolutely, I couldn't imagine our defense. It's one of the stouter run defenses in the NFL, but I mean, anytime you face a back like Nick Chubb or let alone Derrick Henry or CMC, you always have that little nervous inside of you watching it every single rush.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned CMC because in this mini 3-game homestand that the Browns have, they have to face Derrick Henry this week, Lamar Jackson, and the Baltimore Ravens run game next week. And then in week 6, CMC and the 49ers come to town. So, um, yeah, our run defense is certainly going to be tested. But check this out. Before 2020, when we went into Nashville and beat you guys, the Titans had won 3 straight games against us.
Yeah, including the what was it? Can't remember exactly which year it was. We played each other in the season opener.
Yes, 43-13. I
Yes,
was at that game in 2019. That was the year we traded for Odell Beckham Jr. and we had all this pomp and circumstance surrounding us, and we had like 4 or 5 primetime games. And in the season opener, we faced you, and we had like 18 or so penalties called on us.
yep,
It does feel like when we play you guys, it's usually pretty early in the season. We're playing you this week in week 3. Um, 2019, we played you in week 1. 2020, we played you, I think, in like week 9. So that's a little bit later in the season. But still, it feels like we generally play each other early in the season. Have you noticed that?
I do, and I'm honestly, I'll just say that I'm kind of thankful for it. I know it's not that far apart, but that Cleveland weather is a whole lot different than that weather down here in Tennessee. And
Yeah.
to get there before it gets extremely cold, I mean, I'm so thankful for it.
Yeah, I can imagine. But let me ask you this. Because Tannehill has played okay since being in Tennessee. I wouldn't say he's played great. I wouldn't say he's played terrible, though. I would say maybe slightly above average. If, let's say he struggles in this game, throws 3 or 4 interceptions or whatever, do you think there's a chance Malik Willis or Will Levis could come in?
In my opinion, no. Um, Malik, he showed promise in the preseason, and so did. I mean, we didn't get to see but a 1 game sample out of Levis. So it's pretty obvious that Levis isn't ready. Willis, on the other hand, Vrabel's always been the kind of close to the chest coach. He's been the I guess, the enforcer type coach, and he is. Some would say a lot of the local media around Nashville call him hard headed and
Mm,
stuck in his ways. So even if Tannehill has a game where he struggles, I do not see them pulling him and putting in Willis unless it's just an absolute just onslaught. Uh, I don't see any reason they pull him just as of right now because I mean he's already had a 3 interception game this season in the season opener against the Saints.
got it. Yeah, that's a fair assessment. Um, I mean, what was it? 2 years ago, on the very first play of the playoff game against the Bengals, he goes out and throws a pick six.
Yeah.
So before like Titans fans even had a chance to take their seats or anything, it's like, wait, we're already down 7-0. What the hell?
Yep.
But yeah, I was talking with some other Titans fans, and I know you have D Hop, and I know you have Derrick Henry, but when I look at the rest of your offense, there's there's nobody that really like scares me as a Browns fan. And I don't know if I'm looking at it the wrong way, like because I
Well,
know you have like Sharp and you have Burks, but do I need to be worried about them?
Burks has showed a lot of promise. In the games that he has played. Um, if you go back to the Titans' last win before last week, uh, it was like I think it was week 10 against the Packers. He was catching deep balls. He was our deep threat, and he was ultimately the replacement of AJ Brown. And I mean, he hasn't exactly been healthy to show that he's there for that, but the skill set is there. He's just young, and he's starting to learn his ways. He just caught I think it was like a 60 or 70 yard bomb from Tannehill last week against the Chargers.
Hmm.
Um, he's got the skills, but it's putting it together and staying healthy that he's not done yet. And as far as a tight end goes, we have Chig Okonkwo, and that man is a diamond in the rough. Uh, he is an absolute yards after catch monster, and it is tough to bring him down when he gets ahead of steam.
And what about Shaden Sharp? Like, I think he's one of your running backs or another one of your wide
Uh,
receivers.
that's Tajay.
Or my bad. Yeah,
Yeah,
Tajay
Tajay
Sharp. Thank
Spears.
you.
Yeah, he's. I mean, right now, uh, he's actually leading. I think he leads the NFL in yards after contact. I mean, he's a rookie out of Tulane, and he has shown a lot of promise. He's kind of the uh, opposite of Derrick Henry. He's fast. He's shifty. He's a pass catching. He's our pass catching back. He's usually in on the plays that Derrick Henry's. You know, obviously he's in the plays that Derrick Henry's not. And usually, if it's like a third down and a passing situation, that's who's in the game.
Okay. So it sounds like from what you're saying, the Titans have some nice pieces on offense, but other than D Hop and King Henry, obviously, it's nobody that like the Browns should be like shaking in their boots about.
Not really. They're really just a bunch of young. I mean, Chig's in his second year. Burks is in his second year. Tajay's in his first year. He's a rookie. I mean, they're all just young and unproven. This entire offense, outside of Tannehill and D Hop and Burks, is extremely young.
Hmm. Um, I will say your defense though, with guys like Jeffrey Simmons, that's could pose some problems for us because Deshaun Watson really well, considering the fact that he was in the AFC South for a long time, and so I'm sure your defensive coordinator is going to be like, "Oh, I know how to play against
Well, see,
Deshaun Watson."
our defensive coordinator and our offensive coordinator were actually part, which when we hired Mike Vrabel, he was a part of the Houston Texans staff
Hmm.
when Deshaun was there, and our offensive coordinator actually was the last offensive coordinator in Houston to work with Deshaun, and our defensive coordinator also come from Houston with Vrabel, who was on the team with Deshaun. So I feel like this coaching staff is extremely familiar with Deshaun.
Yeah. So that definitely poses a challenge for us, especially because we lost Nick Chubb, but we did bring in Kareem Hunt. He's a familiar face. We know like how he's going to work in this offense. But it sounds like he's going to be the secondary back to Jerome Ford, the running back we recently drafted out of Cincinnati. So I'm going to be interested to see how our offense changes now that we've lost Nick Chubb. Like, do we give the keys to Deshaun Watson and say, hey, go out and be more of a passer instead of like game manager? Because I feel like that's kind of what Deshaun's been these first couple games.
Yeah, Deshaun was always in Houston. He was always the. I don't want to make the comparison because I feel like they're so opposite, but at the same time they're the same. If that
Hmm.
makes sense, but he was always kind of like a Kyler Murray. He made plays with his legs. He'd get outside the pocket. That was just the way. That was the game Deshaun played. And watching his old Houston games and then comparing them to his Browns games, you can tell that he's more. He's not as willing to come outside of the pocket and make those throws that he used to make, or you know, take the hits that he used to. Which I guess that comes with age and being away from the NFL for a year.
That is true. Like he last season, I'll cut him a little bit of a break for last season because he was dealing with all the off season shenanigans and all this and that. We're not going to get into all that because I just don't
Yeah,
want to.
I feel you.
But so I'll give him a little bit of a break for that. But at the same time, like this offseason, he was able to fully learn the playbook. He was able to be a full participant in training camp, OTAs, the whole 9 yards. And he got a little bit of work in the preseason games. Not much, but some. So I that's why I'm not completely letting him off the hook for these first couple games, but at the same time, I'm cutting him a little bit of a break.
Oh, I completely understand. I mean, at this point, he should show at least a little bit of grasp of the offense and be able to.
Correct. Yeah, for sure. He should be. You're 100% right. At this point he should be showing more of a grasp on the offense. Um, but when you look at our wide receivers, we have Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples Jones, Elijah Moore. I feel like we don't really have a number one wide receiver, whereas you guys, DeAndre Hopkins is clearly your number one wide receiver, and Traylon Burks is your number two wide receiver. Um, from what I understand, you'll use Sharp as your number three, but you talked more about him as a pass catching running back. Whereas with us, I'm like, I don't know if Amari Cooper is that definitive number one wide receiver. It feels like with us, maybe you see it differently as a Titans fan watching us, but I don't feel like the Browns have a definitive number one wide receiver.
And that's kind of what the way the Titans have failed this year. Like, the name. I mean, obviously DeAndre Hopkins is going to draw attention. I mean, just the name alone, everybody puts everybody, on ease or unease. But really, so far this season, Tannehill's really spread the ball around. I mean, that first game, I felt like he was trying to force feed Hopkins. Is the reason for the three interceptions. He threw like three passes straight into double coverage, just trying to feed DeAndre Hopkins. The second game against the Chargers, he come out and he actually tried to spread it around, which our number three wide receiver is actually on IR until week 4. Uh, he had a MCL sprain in the preseason,
Hmm.
and but I mean, as far as the last game against the Chargers, Tannehill done a real good job at spreading the ball around. He found open guys. Uh, we have Chris Moore. He caught I think it was like a 30-yard pass. DeAndre was there. He helped us pick up. I think it was like a 12 or a 13-yard gain in overtime to help get us into get or the field goal range
Hmm.
to win the game. Uh, Traylon caught the deep bomb. I mean, he done a really good job at spreading it around, and of course, Derrick Henry's Derrick Henry. You give him the ball, more than likely he's going to fall forward for 2 to 3 yards.
Right.
So, I mean, as far as the Titans' main issue the past couple seasons has been, obviously it's lived through Derrick Henry, 30 carries every game. That's where we rolled. This season with the addition of Tim Kelly at offensive coordinator, the Titans have actually become a little bit pass heavier. Uh,
Okay.
the first game against the Saints, Tajay Spears, the running back, he actually had more plays than Derrick Henry did.
Hmm.
Uh, it's just the Titans are trying to open up the field. They're going to more of a spread concept, kind of that old Bill O'Brien offense. Uh, it's just, I mean, things are changing in Tennessee. Derrick Henry is 29. Uh, I mean, obviously, the team's going to start looking to move on. He's in his last year of his contract. Uh,
Yeah.
but that, as a Titans fan watching the Browns, like, I mean, Amari Cooper, it kind of, this the name almost brings the same amount of unease as the name DeAndre Hopkins. When you look at the Browns, it's like, okay, well, Amari Cooper, but the Titans have had there's no way around it. They've had one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL for the past like 2 or 3 years. That's how it's been, and we do not have a number one corner. We just have we have a group of guys. That's about all I can say. Involves Christian Fulton, Roger McCreary, both second round picks. Um, we have, of course, Kevin Byard and Amani Hooker back deep, and I mean they've struggled so far this season. Christian's already hurt one game in with a hamstring, so the Browns could very well have a heyday through the air.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, that would be good considering we have Baltimore next week and then bye week and then San Francisco, which
yeah,
we know what they're going to do, and then Indianapolis after that, and then Seattle, and then Arizona. So, interesting slate of games coming up for the Browns. But, looking at this matchup specifically, because that's where we are, first of all, I've seen the renderings of your new stadium. It looks amazing, so I can't wait for that. But in terms of the game itself, this feels like it's going to be like a 21-17 type of game. Nothing like 35-31 or like 45-42,
that,
something like that.
that's the classic Titans game. I mean, you can ask any Titans fan; they're not gonna. We could play the worst of the worst, and it's gonna be the closest game that we'll have all season. Like it's just who the Titans are. It's hard nosed, bully ball. That's how Mike Vrabel coaches. That's how this team plays. If the Titans, there's no blowing anybody out. It's always a dog fight, and it is regardless of who the other team is. It seems like every game we play is a close game.
Yeah. Hey, you brought up Mike Vrabel. Um, you've had some playoff success, but I'm sure not the type of playoff success you've wanted. Like you got the number one seed, and then Cincinnati came in and said, "Yeah, we're just gonna beat you anyway." Do you think there's a possibility Mike Vrabel could be on the hot seat?
I don't, and the sole reason is, of course, our GM, John Robinson, was fired midway through last season after the whole AJ Brown debacle. And the current GM that was hired from the 49ers, I believe he was the player uh, personnel, or I'm not sure what his official title was with the 49ers, but he was he was highly thought of by San Francisco. So I mean, I'm excited about the hire to see what he does after this offseason. Um, but he was brought in uh, by, according to our local media. Of course, it's just rumors. The owner's not going to come out and officially say it, but he was brought in to work with Mike Vrabel. So Vrabel has a lot of say as far as personnel, um, and acquisitions and trades and everything like that. It's not just a one man show with the GM and then the coach is supposed to coach. Mike Vrabel has a say in everything that goes on inside the Titans organization. So that's why I don't think after 1 year he'll be put on the hot seat. I think if anything, if it doesn't go well this season, I believe, Mike, you're going to see the Titans start to kind of shift and go through a soft rebuild without Derek, without Tannehill. Um, we've got good pieces on the line. We've got, you know, Tajay Spears, that little rookie running back. We've got Traylon Burks, young wide receiver. We've got a young playmaker at tight end, and our defense is fairly young outside of um, Kevin Byard. So, I mean, it could very well be a soft rebuild after this season. I think Vrabel sticks around to see it through.
Gotcha. And I just want to clarify, I'm not saying Mike Vrabel should be on the hot seat or that he should be fired, because he's been a great coach for you.
Absolutely.
But it's just like, he's the Titans have come up short in games they need to win to like get into the playoffs or to clinch the AFC South, or when they've made the playoffs, they've come up short in those games over the past few years. So I felt like it was a valid,
Yes,
thing.
sir. I mean,
Yeah.
but as Titans fans, like we really, I mean, we knew Vrabel was different when he was hired just because of the way he carried himself.
Mhm.
Um, you
Came
know,
from the Patriots for
yeah,
that matter.
and I mean, when we got into the playoffs, I think it was 2019, and went all the way to the AFC Championship before getting beat by the Chiefs. I mean, when we played the Patriots and effectively, I guess, ended the Tom Brady dynasty in New England, um, seeing the way he coached against Belichick, with if you watch that game, he took like a delay a game and then a false start, and it kept the clock running and almost drove the clock down. Like, I think it was like a minute and 30 seconds just off of taking penalties. Belichick's over on the sideline just absolutely going bananas. Like, it was just an absolute masterclass at coaching by Vrabel, and that's when he kind of set himself apart
Hmm.
when he outsmarted Bill Belichick.
Yeah. I still remember when you somehow beat the Chiefs in the playoffs when Marcus Mariota threw that pass. It got batted down. It came back to him.
Yep.
And he goes into the end zone. And I think, wasn't it Ken Wisenhunt who was the head coach at that time?
No, it was Mike Munchak. Or, no, I'm sorry, Mike Mularkey.
Oh, yeah. And then the Titans say, yeah, we're going to extend him. Next week,
Yep.
destroyed by the Patriots, and the Titans say, yeah, no, actually, we're going to fire him.
Yep. Yep.
I, I loved when you guys had Marcus Mariota. I thought he had so much potential coming out of Oregon. I remember when you guys even drafted Jake Locker out of Washington. Like,
Yep.
I think it's
And
interesting. Huh?
I'll still say to this day, both of those were extreme talents that were ruined by bad coaching
Oh, yeah. I
and bad
mean,
him. Like Mariota, he come out his very first game right off the bat as a rookie and threw 4 touchdowns in the first half. And then he goes on that season, breaks his leg, and it's like he's never the same after that.
mhm.
And he had so much promise and so much potential. Same with Locker. Locker had the arm, he had the talent, but the Titans at the time Uh, they just didn't have the team around him. They had terrible wide receivers. We had a terrible offensive line, and he was getting killed every play, and it was just it led to both their demise.
Yeah. I remember Jake Locker very well because it was week 5, 2014. We come to town to play the Titans in Nashville, and Locker gets injured in that game. You guys go up like 28-3 or something, and then we go on the massive comeback and come back to beat you 29-28.
Yeah, I was at that game.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That yeah, it
Well,
it was
actually, as
rough.
a Browns fan, I'm not sorry.
Yeah, it was rough. It was when the Browns weren't, and neither we weren't either. But it was when neither franchise could really brag about anything. So it was one of
Yeah,
those that was like, if you lose the other team, it's like what are you gonna win?
right. I mean, 2014, it looked like for a period of time we might be able to make the playoffs, and then down the stretch, we lost at Buffalo, and then lost that key game against Indianapolis late in the season, and then
Yeah,
yeah, it just fell apart against Carolina and Baltimore. So whatever. But I remember back in 2013, you guys went 7-9. I'm like, okay, Tennessee's going somewhere. And then the next season, 2014, it just all fell apart for you.
it did. It did. The wheels absolutely fell off.
Yeah. But you guys have had some great players over the years, like Chris Johnson for sure.
Man,
Um,
that's one thing about Tennessee is we have never. I mean, there may be a few seasons, but as far as like an actual franchise, we have never really struggled in the run game. We went from Earl Campbell to Eddie George to Chris Johnson to now Derrick Henry. I mean, it's one thing that we've never really struggled with. Now,
yeah.
receiver on the other hand, that's never ever been the Titans' strong suit until AJ Brown came along,
Yep. And then you decided to trade him to the Eagles, and
and our
well,
GM got fired.
and rightfully so, because we've seen what AJ Brown has gone on to do with Jalen Hurts and the Eagles. He
Yep,
was like a minute away from winning the Super Bowl.
yep,
But yeah, it should be a pretty interesting game on Sunday. Like I said, I'm thinking this is going to be like a 21-16 type of game. It doesn't feel like it's going to, like I said earlier, it doesn't feel like it's going to be like a 34-31 type of game because unless the Browns can somehow break out and put up that type of offense. But
yeah.
I don't think so.
I'm kind of with you. I believe it'll be like a 24-21 type of game. I mean, it's going to be close. Miles Garrett and Smith worry me. We have, like I said, we have a lot of youth and a lot of unproven on the offensive line. Our entire offensive line is brand spanking new. These guys have
Mm-hmm.
never played together. Andre Dillard, he was a first round pick, but he suffered an injury and played for the Eagles. So he was benched. And I think Jordan Mailata took his spot. And so he had rode the bench for the Eagles for the past couple years. So we brought him in as our new left tackle. We drafted Peter Skoronski in the first round. He's our left guard. We have Aaron Brewer, who's extremely undersized at center. We have Daniel Brunskill. He was a backup for the 49ers. We have him at right guard, and we have Chris Hubbard at right tackle. So I mean, this offensive line, they're still learning one another. They still struggle with stunts, which actually, now to my knowledge, Peter Skronsky has been ruled out for this week. Um, so he's not even going to be playing. He had to have an emergency appendectomy.
Oh
Um,
boy, he can talk to Joe Burrow about that one.
yeah. So we'll probably have a second round pick who's never really panned out for us so far, playing left guard. So I mean, this offensive line has never played together. They're still struggling. That was a lot of things that bit us when we played the Saints was stunts and things like that. It was absolutely killing our offensive line and getting Tannehill absolutely murdered. And that worries me a lot with Smith and Miles Garrett because those are the type of players they don't need stunts. They're liable to just bully you themselves,
Yeah,
and I mean
I
it is what it is.
right. I think I saw Zadarius Smith is. I think he got injured last week against Pittsburgh, so I'm not 100% sure if he's going to play this week against the Titans, which, if he doesn't, that's a big break for you because you mostly have to worry about Myles Garrett then. But, looking at your defensive line against our offensive line, you know, we lost Jack Conklin for the season, so we have DeJuan Jones going, I believe, at right tackle, which TJ Watt made sure to say hi to him a few times last
Yeah,
week. And, you have, I believe Harold Landry is still with you guys. Correct
yeah.
me if I'm wrong
We
there.
we signed him to a long-term deal or this last offseason.
Yeah, so that he definitely worries me. You have Jeffrey Simmons, who we know what Jeffrey Simmons
Yeah,
is. I would say he's one of the more underrated defensive players in the league, in my opinion.
absolutely.
Uh,
He goes unnoticed more than he should.
yes, but
And we
I'm.
had
Go
we
ahead.
we actually added Arden Key.
Hmm.
He was a game changer in week one. He's more of your speed rusher. He uh, doesn't hold a lot when it comes to power. He uses his speed to get around the edge. And the first game against the Saints, he actually had 2 sacks. Um, Now last week, going up against someone like Rashawn Slater was a little bit of a different story. But he's really showed promise. And then Danico Autry and Tier Tart, they've been great so far this season. So I mean, the Titans front four is definitely to be to I I guess the easiest way to put it is it's not going to be easy.
Oh, it's not going to be easy for either side, but
Yeah,
you talked about it. D'Amico Autry, you have Arden Key, Harold Landry, Jeffrey Simmons. That's a formidable group.
yeah.
So, well, I want to thank you for joining me and helping me along with this goal. Um, should be a pretty interesting game on Sunday. I will be there, so I'll make sure to do a little bit of friendly banter with you in the Facebook Messenger group chat that we have going,
Absolutely.
along with the other NFL fans in there. By the way, I love your username in there, Mayo in
Yeah,
coffee.
yeah. Little shot
So,
at my little shot at my boy Levis, which being from Kentucky, I'm a Kentucky fan, so I mean,
how's it going? But yeah, we'll make sure to talk in the live chat and stuff. But thanks for coming on. Do you have any like social media sites that you want to promote or anything?
not really, man. You can just follow me on Twitter. I think it's like Logan underscore Thomas. Uh, that's really about it. I don't really, I'm not much for the content game. I'm a small town guy from Kentucky, so don't have a
Fair
whole.
enough.
But
Fair enough.
I appreciate you having me on, man, and hopefully we can do this again in the future.
For sure. We'll definitely arrange something.
All
Thanks,
right,
man.
you have a good night.
You too. All right. So that was my video collaboration to preview this week's matchup between the Tennessee Titans and the Cleveland Browns. So hopefully you enjoyed it. But yeah, like we were saying, this should be like a 21-16, maybe 24-21 type of game. I want to see what Amari Cooper does in this game. I feel like he should be able to break out and show me that he can become that number one wide receiver. Because as I was saying to Logan, and I've said this a few times on my videos, right now, I don't believe Amari Cooper is a number one wide receiver. As I said, I don't believe the Browns have a definitive number one wide receiver. Now, the Chiefs have shown that you can make it work if you don't have a number one wide receiver. They won the freaking Super Bowl last year. But at the same time, who does Patrick Mahomes have? Travis Kelce. Where you could kind of argue the same thing in Baltimore. Lamar Jackson hasn't had that definitive number one wide receiver. But who has he constantly had? Mark Andrews. So there you go. Jacksonville, they just brought in Calvin Ridley to be Trevor Lawrence's number one wide receiver. Miami, Tyreek Hill. They made that trade with Kansas City to bring in Tyreek Hill. You could argue whether Tyreek Hill is the number one wide receiver or whether it's Jalen Waddle, but they have two definitive wide receivers. You get my point. When you look at Cincinnati, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, T. Higgins could be a number one wide receiver on just about any other team. With Philadelphia, for example, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Minnesota, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. I know Jordan Addison's a rookie, but he's coming along. Most of these great teams have one or two great to star wide receivers. Or, like I said, in the case of the Chiefs and the Ravens, they have great to superstar level tight ends. I don't feel like the Browns have either of those right now. I like Donovan Peoples-Jones. I like Elijah Moore. I like Amari Cooper. But I wouldn't say any of them are great to superstar. And David Njoku, he's been pretty good. He's had his moments. Harrison Bryant, same thing. He's been pretty good. I can't say he's great. I can't say he's a superstar. So that's where I think the Browns fall short. Now, obviously, we lost Nick Chubb last week against the Steelers, so we had to bring in Kareem Hunt. And now Jerome Ford is our number one running back. I'll be very curious to see how that changes our offense. Do we depend more on Deshaun Watson? Does he become more of a thrower? Because I know the Browns, with Kevin Stefanski, they want to be more of a run-heavy team. It's the same type of thing with Tennessee. Logan and I were talking about that. That's why we think this is going to be like a 17-16, 24-21, 21-20, somewhere in that neighborhood. But yeah, so that's going to do it for this video. If you liked what you saw and you liked what you heard, make sure you punch that subscribe button like a UFC player. Hit the like button with the Judas effect, courtesy of Chris Jericho, and deliver a curb stomp to the notification bell, courtesy of the World Heavyweight Champion, Seth freaking Rollins. And I will see you on another episode of the Sports Room Talk Show. Engraven Vids. It is Ravens week next week. So I am calling you out right here, right now. I want you to come on to the Sports Room Talk Show because I want to talk Ravens Browns with you. So let's make it happen. Engraven Vids, you have been called out.